Backyard Farmer is a co-production of NET Television and Nebraska Extension.
Tonight on Backyard Farmer, we'll help you get a spring lawn established, and we'll check out an aquaponics operation in a gardener's home. That's all coming up next, right here on Backyard Farmer. Good evening and welcome to another edition of Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd and I'll be your host for the next hour of good gardening. Joining me on the panel tonight, we have our swashbuckling experts from Nebraska Extension and University Landscape Services. Answering those insect questions, Fred Baxendale.
Good evening, Kim.
Turf and weed questions, Bill Kreuzer.
Good evening, Carl.
We have Lauren Giesler, who's going to answer all of our rots and spots questions.
Swashbuckling, awesome to be here today.
And Jeff Culbertson is going to answer our horticulture questions.
Thrilled to be here.
You know, if you have a gardening question, you can speak to one of our phone volunteers. Dial 402-471212 if you live in Lincoln, or our toll-free number is 1-800-676-5446. We also accept your email questions, pictures also for a future show. That address is byf@unl.edu. When you do send us an email, please tell us as much information as you can, including at least which part of the state you live in. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow our tweets on Twitter, and look at our video features on YouTube for more information. Before we get to questions, let's take a look at samples, and you did keep that critter in his cage for me.
I did. And hopefully we'll get this so we don't have any reflection here. So this is a wolf spider. It's one of the larger specimens that I've seen. It's actually in the genus Hogna, sort of an interesting generic name. But it's native to the northern Great Plains, so we'd find this in Nebraska. It actually came from the Lincoln area. A couple of just interesting factoids. Again, this is a female, and she will be laying an egg mass fairly soon, and she'll stick with that egg mass. And in fact, we'll take when the babies hatch, when the spiderlings hatch, she'll load them on her back. And many of our viewers, I'm sure, have seen large wolf spiders that have the babies on their back. You touch them and they all scatter. So that's pretty cool. The other thing is that, like any of these other large spiders, while they are not particularly poisonous to people, they do have a very, a profound bite. Let's put it that way. And so, you never would want to handle one of these. And again, they won't bite, but if you were to contain them in your hand, they certainly might. So, large wolf spider, native to Nebraska. Kind of a cool bug of the week.
Excellent. Thank you for keeping her in her cage.
Yes.
Okay, Bill, you actually have a bit of a correction and a sample.
Yeah, I have both. And so today, first we wanted to say that we had some keen viewers from last week's show and saw that we had misidentified two weeds. And so the first weed should have been this common burdock. And I don't know what it was misidentified as. It's not important because it was wrong. So that's common burdock. And then the second weed that we misidentified last week was poison hemlock, and so I just want to get that clarified. Thanks, viewers, for catching that and informing us that we made a mistake. We are human. And so tonight, I want to talk about what I really like, and that's fertilizer. So again, it's really exciting. I brought in a fertilizer bag, and there's a lot of different fertilizers out there, and so I hope I can get this displayed just right. I want to draw your attention to this part of the back of the label, where it talks about the types of fertilizer that is in this bag. And so we have the total nitrogen, which is the important number, but then we have some things like ammoniacal nitrogen, water-insoluble nitrogen, urea nitrogen, and other water-soluble nitrogen sources. And so when we're looking for a fertilizer, we want to find one that's at least half water-insoluble or slow-release fertilizer. And so if you look down here at the bottom, it says slowly available nitrogen. Let's look for that. Try to get a fertilizer that's got as much of that as possible, and that will ensure a nice long release of this fertilizer over the course of 8, 10, 12 weeks, as opposed to just over the course of 4 weeks with a cheaper product.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. Okay, Lauren.
Well, I brought along a sample tonight because I think a lot of our viewers, I don't know if you're like me, you might still be doing some cleanup and trying to use some sanitation out there. If you have evergreens in your landscape, some of the diseases you can run into are some of the tip blight diseases. And this is just off of a small shrub juniper that has Cabotina tip blight. So when you see a lot of the growth is fine, and then we just have one individual tip here, and on the actual shrub, it was kind of scattered, so it wasn't every tip. And if you look close, I don't know if we'll see it, but there'll be kind of a dusty appearance at the base of that, and that's actually the fungus sporulating with that. So a great way to manage diseases like this are to just simply prune that off and remove it, and you remove that spore presence in the area there, and you're going to reduce your infection in the future. So I'm not a real big advocate for fungicide use in the backyard unless it's absolutely needed, and I would try sanitation every time, and this would be a good way to do it.
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, Jeff. Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Well, we've had something scary. We've had fertilizer and something sporulating. So I thought I'd bring in something that would be, you know, kind of lift us up a little bit.
My spider wasn't scary?
That's what I'm saying. It was scary. So we have pearl bush here, which is not a real common shrub. But for us, it grows maybe, you know, it might top out at about 6 foot, but usually we're in the 4 to 5 foot range. It has nice arching branches. This is kind of its nice time of year when it's been flowering. With the weather we've had this kind of extended bloom this year. I think we've all appreciated the fact that our flowering shrubs have kind of continued to do their thing a little longer than normal. But it's very easy to grow. And, you know, I expect to get 15 years out of this. Kim and I were talking about the 15-year limit on a lot of shrubs, and this is probably one of them that would last about that long and still do its thing pretty well.
And it gets its name because as the buds form, they look like a string of pearls.
Oh.
That's where the common name comes from.
Cool.
There you go. Very nice. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, Fred, you get the first picture, and this is a Bellevue viewer. 23-year-old pin oak. She went to pick up a fallen branch and found what looks like a big old wad of a fungus. She found some more. She thinks they're galls. She wonders, you know, what we think that might be.
Okay, so, you know, we aren't sure, and Lauren and I kind of talked about this image a little bit. You know, what we think it is probably an oak apple gall, and these are very, very large galls that are caused by a wasp that lays its egg in the branch, in the twig, and then that the gall grows to, gosh, almost golf ball size, so very large galls. And in the center is just a little spherical area that has where the wasp actually is, the larva is developing, right? Generally, they aren't too abundant on oaks. They are exclusively on oaks, and they just generally aren't too much of a problem. So if there were dozens of them or hundreds of them on the tree, I would be more concerned. If there's one here, one there, I guess that falls under the all part of nature's wondrous pageantry category. And I really wouldn't be too concerned. They won't really harm the tree, and they'll fall off at the end of the year, though. Obviously, they're a little bit unsightly.
Okay, thank you, Fred. And I think you brought in a fresh one last year.
I did. You know, I think we've had those on in the past. They're really, really cool. They're this
like
a large sphere with a large sphere. Inside there's the little sphere that has the wasp in it.
Very cool. All right, Bill, you actually, I believe, provided the pictures for your first question, which is what happened here.
Yeah, and it's something I've seen way too much this spring, unfortunately, across different cities throughout Nebraska, especially eastern Nebraska. And when you look at that type of damage, it's pretty obvious that it's man-made, it's not natural. And so when we kind of look at the soil, see if there's a salt issue there. We didn't have a lot of salt applied this year, it wasn't salt. And so really look at herbicides, and that's a herbicide injury, probably from a herbicide applied last fall, and it killed the grass over the course of this winter, and then the grass didn't green up. For the most part, we're seeing a lot of that grass recover in the thin areas, but the big areas, that's where we're seeing some pretty widespread death of the turf grass, and then we'll have to look at seeding or sodding to get it to recover. Not sure why it happened last year. It was warm. It was kind of dry. Maybe that was something that made that injury occur last year and not what we normally see in the fall with an application.
All right, thank you, Bill. All right, Lauren, we've had several questions this year about snow mold. And I think Amy mentioned that they've had it up north, but this is a viewer that is out in kind of the Cozad, Lexington area. What do we think here?
Well, a couple things. I mean, it's in a location where you could say it's snow mold, but this close-up picture really doesn't look to me to be the evidence of what we would see with snow mold. Many times we'll see the sclerotia, how that fungus survives through the winter in those grass blades. And what looks like to me in that picture of the close-up is more of some saprophytes that are growing there that may not have caused any problems. So it's kind of hard to tell from this. I don't know from the previous picture if there was any herbicide possibility here, Bill, like you were showing, or salt injury on the road, something like that.
Well, and out in that part of the state this year, we had a lot of winter kill from the dry, windy conditions, and seeing it on the top of that slope, but fine down in the low spot where you expect snow to collect, makes me think that it was probably some abiotic stress like a desiccation or salt that might have caused the grass to die.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Speaking of death, sorry, Jeff.
Let's talk to Jeff now.
This is a Northeast Nebraska viewer that had 6 Concord grapevines. 5 of the 6 appeared mostly dead after the 2013-2014 winter, so a year ago. She let them go. This year she's got multiple shoots from about the lower foot.
Okay.
So she's wondering if she should prune some of them out, let them all grow. How would we tell her to handle the grapes?
Well, and it's kind of hard to tell from this, but certainly my first approach would be to get all the dead out of the plants if she hasn't already done that, taking all the dead canes out of it. And it looks like we have multiple canes coming out of that piece of the main plant there. So I would look at thinning that down to 4 or 5 main canes and then cutting those back, leaving maybe 8 to 12 buds, something like that, and trying to see if we can get things started over again. That would be my first approach right now for this first year.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Well, over the years, we've recommended that lawn renovation take place in the fall, not the spring. Of course, you can try it in the spring if you want to, and here is our turfgrass specialist, Bill, who is going to talk to you about what he did to renovate his lawn and give you some tips on what you could do too.
The second most asked question we get in the spring, aside from how to take care of those dandelions, is it a good time to seed and should we be seeding in the spring? And generally the better answer is we should sod in the spring and not seed. And why is that? Well, because the soils are cold and so it's hard to get that seed to germinate. And then we have issues with young seedlings handling the summer stress. And third biggest reason that most lawn seedings fail in the spring is because we have annual weed competition. And so our seedlings can't outcompete those weeds. But if you're like me and your lawn has some problems and you're feeling ambitious, you want to try to seed that lawn in the spring, and that's exactly what I did. And so the first question we need to have is, why is our lawn failing? Why are we going to seed it now? And so we look at this lawn. There's multiple reasons why this lawn is failing. The first reason is, well, we have some big dog spots that were killed this winter, we need to take care of because we can't have these big large spots dead all summer long. Another issue we have is some shade from this maple tree. This lawn is on the north side of the property and it's underneath a dense shaded maple. That grass is thinning out. We also have some issues with grading and bumps in the ground that cause scalping when we mow. And so we're going to go through and fix this lawn so that we can have a nice, long-standing, sustainable turf into the future. And so some of the steps that we took to get the grass to grow and mature is first to increase soil temperatures. We scalped the lawn down a couple of weeks prior to seeding. This lets the sun's radiation get down to that soil, heat up that soil so we have better chance of germination. We did this by lowering the mower as low as we possibly could, and every time we mowed, we actually took the clippings off, which is something we don't recommend generally, but for this situation, we want those clippings away. Then we went through with a dethatching unit and removed all the thatch from the lawn. We set the dethatcher nice and low to remove as much dead material that's there from our previous lawn so we have a good seed to soil contact and a good seed bed into the future. Then we seeded multiple directions with the seeder. Using a slit seeder you can rent is a great way to help ensure we have good seed to soil contact because it drops the seed right into the slits. And then we rolled over the lawn and began to water it. And in future episodes, we'll talk about what we did for fertility and herbicides and irrigation throughout the course of this growing to get this lawn looking good. And so over the course of this year, we'll continue to come back and evaluate the steps and some of the troubles that I've had getting this lawn established in the springtime, because it's not easy, but we can make it work with the right tools.
As Bill said, we're going to go back to his lawn several times this year to check on his progress, see if he actually knows what he's talking about, and hear more tips about keeping that lawn green and growing. So we'll see.
It's going to be a challenge. Seeding in the spring's hard, so we'll see.
It is. Well, that'd be a good reason to tell people not to do it.
I say it every day, right?
Okay. All right, Fred, you get the next insect picture, and this is a viewer in Council Bluffs.
Okay.
The first picture, this one is of insects coming out from under the sidewalk every spring. What are they and what to do?
Well, you know, folks, a lot of ants right now are starting to emerge as winged forms, alates. These are not ants. These are termites. And again, from this image, it's hard to tell how close it is to the house if there's a nearby structure, but this is something to be concerned about. What that says is that there's an underground colony of termites in the vicinity of that walk. And let's assume that there's a house nearby or other outbuilding or a wooden structure. So the termites live in the soil, and then they they move to the wooden structures, and they chew out the wood, and they can do extensive damage. So this is something of concern. You know, depending on the location of that termite swarm, they're called swarming termites, I would suggest that they might want to contact a local pest control operator, someone from their city, their town, and have them come out and assess to make sure there isn't termite damage in the house. You don't see it until there's often a lot of damage there. And again, this would be worth, if it were my home, I would certainly call someone out and have a professional take a look and assess what's going on. Now, if this sidewalk's out in the middle of nowhere, I'm not so concerned. But if there's a house nearby, certainly a professional needs to come and take a look.
All right, thank you, Fred. So this is a viewer who sent us pictures of mutant dandelions, Bill.
Okay.
He's never seen them before, a whole bunch in the front yard. He did talk about, you know, he's put down some turf builder, some crabgrass preventer. It wasn't weed and feed. Mm-hmm. But then he says he's creeped out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not X-Man dandelion or something like that. I mean, it's not a mutant in that sense, but there's some weird going on here. Generally, it can occur for several different reasons, but one of the most common reasons this occurs is from low rates of herbicide hitting that leaf. So maybe even a neighbor on a windy day was spraying and it was moving into your yard. Because a herbicide like 2,4-D is actually a hormone. And so if you're putting small doses of hormones onto the plant, if it doesn't kill them like a heavy rate does, it can change things like how the plant grows. And so it could be a hormonal thing. It could be a genotype thing, something specific to the genetics of that plant. And so it's really hard to say. It's just kind of cool. It's still going to die the same way. It probably actually will die easier because it's weaker with all that energy going to make flowers. And so you can probably go into your yard. It's probably going to be safe. You'll be fine.
And Jeff, I think you sent us pictures of fasciation,
yeah.
daffodils on
right.
campus.
Yeah, we had that, and I saw fasciation and dandelions as well on campus this year. So
yeah, weird year.
Yeah.
Fun year.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. All right. So this is also a Bellevue viewer, and this is also the pin oak.
Oh.
And in the pin oak, we also have this black stuff, and I actually have seen 2 or 3 oaks in Lincoln that have the same thing on them.
So this one, I was trying to discern from the picture, looking closer, if that was a hard substance or if it was more gelatinous like we see. When we have a dead branch on many trees, we can have some fungi that will colonize those that are more like a jelly fungus. And when I looked close at it, I thought it glistened like it may be that. So there's a fungus that's in the genus Auricularia that can affect dead branches. So if that's the case, and this was a branch in an oak tree, which many times in a tree there's some dead branches up there, and then they get colonized by secondary fungi that can produce fruiting structures such as these. If it's a hard substance, I can't really say for sure what it is, and would love to see a sample in the diagnostic clinic. Okay. But either way, I don't see it as a disease problem. If you're concerned about it, I always recommend pruning out any dead limbs and branches and twigs and trees just for sanitation purposes in case things are colonizing them.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Jeff, this is a Holdridge viewer. They have an old maple, and apparently last June, the big old storm that came through developed a big crack. He says it's about a quarter of the overall tree is connected above that vertical split in the trunk. He wants to know if he can strap it or do something to keep that tree together.
Well, there are some methods to help stabilize that branch. It's a large branch, and I certainly understand why they want to try to keep that attached to the tree, because it will change the overall shape of the tree and probably what's going on in the yard below. You know, obviously, to me, it looks like that branch was actually torqued and twisted, and that's why we got that lateral split through the tree there like that. So, you know, I would see if you could contact either Nebraska State Forester for your area or a certified arborist to come out and take a look at the tree. If it was my tree, I'd remove the branch. I'd worry about more splitting going down that trunk, and it looks like it's migrating down the trunk. And then we'd have more damage to the tree. So it's just an opportunity to prune that and then get something started nearby to take its place eventually.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Well, spring has shown us a wonderful array of flowers this year, and our flowering crabapples here on campus were in their full glory. They're a great addition to many home landscapes. There are a few things to keep in mind before planting, and for our green and growing tip this week, we'll talk about what you need to do to enjoy your crabapple trees for years to come. This is the time of year when people love the crab apples, those pink and white blooms that are very, very fragrant. If you're going to go off to the nursery and buy one, however, a couple of things to keep in mind. First off, they're an ornamental tree and they branch low. They're never going to branch high, and what that means for you and your landscape is you're going to have to figure out how to deal with all that space beneath the canopy. The dwarf ones in particular branch very low, 3 to 4 feet off the ground. This is prairie fire, which is one of the dwarfs. Another one is coral burst, which is spectacular. There's one on the market called firecracker. You have to figure out what you are going to plant or mulch beneath the canopy, especially as they get bigger. The other thing to remember is you are committed to a lifetime of dealing with suckers potentially, and to keep them in good health, you're going to have to do a lot of pruning, either during dormancy or in summer pruning, and make sure you get the ones that are disease resistant. We've talked a lot about those diseases that wreak havoc on our crabapple trees, and the best way to avoid that is to pick one out that is resistant in the first place. And I think that's one of the things you would say in particular, Lauren.
Number one option right there.
There you go. All right. Fred, this is an Octavia viewer. They have hostas, and they get big holes in the middle of the summer. And they know it's slugs, even though that's not an insect. But they want to know how to treat, preferably organically, and apparently they've gotten worse in the last couple of years.
Yeah, okay. So slugs like really moist conditions. So, and of course we want to mulch our hostas, you know, because that's good for keeping the bed healthy. But you know, that mulch is ideal for the slugs to develop. So one of the things you want to do, there's a couple things. First off, go in and turn that mulch. It can mat down and it can form a hard surface that slugs absolutely love. Then they hide underneath it, come out at night and feed on the hosta. So you want to sort of break that up and stir it up just a little bit. The other thing that you can do is you can put down pieces of little plywood or shingles or something, and if it's wet under there, the slugs will be attracted to those areas. Then in the morning, you can pull those back and collect the slugs and dump them into some soapy water. Now, there are some products that you can use. One is called Slugetta. That's the commercial name. And it contains a chemical called, and it's actually a molluscicide called metaldehyde. And that would be one that you could use as a bait. And you sprinkle the bait around, and the slugs eat that bait. So what you're going to need to use is a combination of approaches. You know, keep it drying out the surface a little bit, and then using something to collect the slugs, and then perhaps using a bait.
All right.
Fred, is it right that
Beer.
beer is a bait?
You could beer actually is, and so you could actually.
It usually doesn't take a whole beer.
It seems like a
No,
waste.
because you drink half and then you're right.
No.
Right. But
I knew that was coming.
I mean, really.
You could just put a saucer down, and the slugs will go in and drown, supposedly, and drown, and that works.
Happily drowned.
Yeah, they're happy when they drown.
Sounds better than stomping them.
Skunk beer work?
Anything. Skunk, the older the better.
All right, Bill, you have a Lincoln viewer who wants to know how to get rid of creeping Charlie in the lawn.
Oh, it's going
And
to be
the
a
when.
challenge.
Yeah.
The when is the more important question than the how. And so we can't really do much about it now. We're going to have to live with it, mow it, fertilize the lawn, help outcompete the weed. You're not really going to be able to spray it and get any kind of control. The best control is definitely in the fall after that first frost. A three-way mixed product will do okay. Get something with triclopure in it that will do a really good job of helping to knock down the creeping Charlie. Sequential applications in the fall, so probably mid-September, October-ish, maybe even late October if it's really stubborn.
All right, and good lawn care to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, all these weeds, it comes down to maintaining the grass properly, and they're telling us we're doing something wrong if we have weeds.
Okay. All right, so Lauren, you're going to get this one just because. This viewer has asters that come up every year and then they die before flowering. A crown rot of some sort? Picture later in the year as they're succumbing?
There could be. One of the things that comes to mind with that is many of our asters get a viral or phytoplasma disease, which would make them more susceptible to some of our crown and root rots. So I would look for any distorted growth in those asters when they're starting to emerge and develop. If they're looking atypical, I would go ahead and rogue those out right away. Other than that, I don't really have any advice other than if it starts to happen, maybe bring a sample into the diagnostic lab.
All right, excellent, thank you. Jeff, this is a north central Nebraska viewer. They have evergreens and it looks like blue spruce and concolor fir. Okay. Very light green instead of their usual color. So the question is, what's going on? What would you recommend? I don't know if you have any on campus that are doing that.
Well, I suppose my concern is that maybe the trees are leaving us here, so if they're not greening up like they should. So we've had kind of a late spring, things have been colder than normal, so I don't know if I would get real concerned yet. I would look to see if they're starting to candle, if they're starting to extend some growth, if they're putting on some new needles at the tips. So that would be one thing that would help alleviate some of my fears. Again, make sure that they're being watered, that the soil's moist, that they have a chance to recover. So again, kind of like Bill was saying with turf, we want to make sure we have good growing conditions. But yeah, kind of keep your fingers crossed. We've had a lot of strange things happen with our plants this year. So.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Well, last week we showed you some students who are expanding our space out at our garden. Before we go to break, we want to show you another addition to the Backyard Farmer Garden. This week on the edge of the Backyard Farmer Garden, we had a lot of fun planting some small fruit trees, which would be appropriate for the home landscape. We had a couple of student classes, landscape management and landscape design, participate in this. And we have a good mix. We have apple trees that are semi-dwarf. We have an interesting purple foliaged plant called a nectaplum, which according to rumor tastes just excellent if you can purchase one at the grocery store. So hopefully ours will actually produce fruit. We have a peach tree and we have a couple of cherry trees. So It will be really great to watch how these trees perform over the years. We'll be able to talk about how you manage semi-dwarf fruit trees in the home landscape. We'll be able to talk about pruning, to be able to consider whether we are going to do any management of pests or diseases or just let those parts of nature's wondrous pageantry run their course. And certainly then we will show you how to mulch appropriately after we get the turf killed to be able to get these fruit trees doing their thing. It's time for a short break. Coming up on our show, we'll have Gladys's Plant of the Week and the Lightning Round. Stay tuned for more Backyard Farmer right after these messages. Welcome back to Backyard Farmer. We've got more of your questions to answer, and later on in the show, we'll be checking out an aquaponics setup in a home. You can still phone in your questions by dialing 1-800-676-5446. While you're doing that, we're going to start the lightning round. Are you ready, gentlemen?
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, Jeff, this is a viewer who actually found this recipe on social media for mixing vinegar, salt, and Dawn dish soap to kill weeds in their patio.
We don't want to use that with the salt.
All
So
right.
there's good products out there to use, so find something that you can buy at the garden center.
All right. Is Omagrow okay to use in gardens, which is the Omaha compost?
I would think so, yes.
All right. What about horse manure or cow manure with sawdust added in, all fresh?
Why don't we compost that? So that gives you a chance to make your own compost for your yard.
All right. We have a viewer who had white rugosa roses that were 20 years old, not seeing much green on them this year. What do we think?
Well, you can cut them back, remove all the dead, and see what happens, and keep an eye on them. But, you know, we've had a lot of problems with roses, so it wouldn't surprise me.
All right. Have you heard of firecracker crabapple, and is it okay here?
You know, I guess I've heard of it. I'm not sure it would probably be one of my main selections for here. I would go and look at a nursery and see if you can find a good disease-resistant crab.
Okay. Can you use the ashes from your smoker in your garden?
No, you can't. Don't add anything. It's just going to raise the pH. So.
All right. Excellent. Nice job. You ready, Lauren?
Ready like salami tonight, Kim.
Okay. So this viewer wants to know if shelf mushrooms like hen of the woods would work well in a souffle.
Sure, just make sure you know what they are.
Okay. We used to talk about artillery fungus. Is that any more an issue in Nebraska?
Well, artillery fungus, to my knowledge, has never been found in Nebraska. It's more of an East Coast thing. It's closely related to the bird nest fungus, which does not shoot its spores and stick on siding like the artillery fungus.
All right. Why is there so much powdery mildew in the turf this year?
Oh, it's nice and overcast and raining occasionally. It's beautiful weather to be a powdery mildew fungus.
Okay, so the hubris, and I think this person meant humus in the woods, is that necessary for mushroom growth?
Yes, it is. Many times. It depends on the species of mushroom we're talking about. Those decomposers are going to use that as a food source.
All right.
Not morels, though.
Okay. Is it okay to put moldy fruit from the kitchen in your compost pile?
Absolutely.
All right. Bacterial scorch on maples, does that occur every single year?
No.
Okay. Nice job.
2 6s.
You ready, Bill?
Yep.
Okay.
There we go.
We have a viewer who asked us about no-mow lawns that are advertised. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Generally, no. It's usually zoysia grass. There is a new variety of cool-season grass that might be potential in the future, but generally, no.
Okay. Is bagging or mulching your clippings better for the long-term health of the lawn?
Always mulch your clippings. Never bag them.
Okay. Is it still okay to seed fescue and bluegrass across the state? Or
Yep, it's right now. It's soils are finally warm, and we have a little bit of time to get that grass grown before the summer heat stress.
Okay. Can you use grass begone around ornamental grasses?
I'd say no. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's dangerous.
Okay, we have a viewer who wants to know whether they can control their violets and their dandelions in their lawn at the same time, and if so, when is that?
You can with a bunch of different herbicides. We'll handle both, and again, fall for those type of weeds.
Okay, this viewer has winterizer still in the bag sitting in the garage. Can they still put it on their
Use
turf?
it. Winterizer is, it's just a trade thing. It means nothing to cool season grass. You can use it now, just fine.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. Ready, Fred?
I'm ready.
Okay. Do solitary bees produce honey?
Generally, no.
Okay. Why are there so many ticks this year?
Because there were a lot of mammals, a lot of little rodents and things out there, and the conditions have been about perfect.
Okay, so if a person is going hiking or shrooming, what is the best tick repellent that they can use?
You can get something called Repel that you spray on your clothing, or I like DEET, just using the insect repellent.
Okay, so we already talked about slugs, but this viewer wants to know the most eco-friendly slug deterrent.
Eco-friendly, probably, again, using the Matildahyde product.
Okay, what is the temperature at which we can expect mosquitoes to appear?
Oh, they're already out. So in mid-40s.
Okay, when should we expect Japanese beetles?
Early June.
And what do we kill them with?
Probably you can use either a foliar spray or you can use a systemic spray.
Excellent. Okay.
Wow.
Whoa, look at there.
Wow, that's,
Fred pulls it out at the end.
those are some of the quickest answers.
That I've ever given.
Quality.
Good.
And quick.
You guys are remembering what lightning round means. Excellent. Okay, so what has Gladys brought us, Jeff?
Well, we have two kind of unusual things. The first I'll look at is the purple flower we have here, which is a dwarf iris. And Gladys reminds us it likes it hot and dry, so this is one you want to put in a sunny spot. You're not going to want to mulch it. You know, it will tolerate a little bit of light shade, but she prefers to have this kind of out, and you know, this is a good verge plant, as we like to say. So don't you think, huh?
Yeah, that's a great word.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the first one. The other one, the taller one with the white flowers here, is a personal favorite of mine. This is yellowhorn. So this is a large shrub, small tree, native of China. Usually it'll be something that's multi-stem. And it's just flowering right now. It's really a little unusual, a lovely small tree, large shrub you could have in your yard. It produces a kind of a large encapsulated fruit, and it has nuts in there that are said to taste like macadamia nuts. I haven't eaten one yet. I always keep them to grow new trees from, so I haven't been nervy enough to use one for my own consumption yet, but anyway.
Beautiful combination.
Yeah.
Any fragrance?
No, not really. Not too much fragrance. And with the pearl bush, there's really no fragrance with that either, so.
Yeah. All right, thank you to Gladys as always, and thank you, Jeff. All right, Fred, you get the next pictures.
Okay.
And this is a viewer who took 3 pictures within minutes of one another.
Cool.
They're the
Wow.
same moth. All the stages they're saying were beautiful. They want to know what kind of a moth it is, and this is in Council Bluffs.
Well, because I looked ahead, I would have had difficulty with these.
Yeah.
It's a Luna moth. It's a Luna moth, and it's probably the most coveted of all the large silkworm moths that we find. Everyone as a collector wants to collect one of these. They're absolutely gorgeous with the long tails, that light green. When you see the advertisements for Lunesta, you know, again, they feature a Luna moth. Again, and so the caterpillars are large. They're 3 inches long, you know, and almost the size of a hot dog. So they're a fairly large moth, and you know, they feed up in trees on walnut and various other kinds of trees. They don't cause any damage. They aren't abundant enough. So I just had a chapter. I brought something in. So this actually, I don't know if we can see, if we can get a close up here, but this is a Luna moth. This is a cocoon that would have come out of, and you can see the opening where it came out. Now this is not from this particular great camera work.
Very cool.
So here's the cocoon, and so that's where the that moth would have come out.
Awesome.
Luna moth, one of my absolute favorites.
They're all your favorites.
Well, that's true.
Okay, Bill, this is, let's see, this viewer is in Gretna.
Okay.
A 4-year-old lawn that was sodded when he bought the house. Not sure what kind of turf it is, but soft, thin blades. He'd like to overseed. He wants to overseed with something that matches. And so he's kind of wondering how to find the right seed. And then he's also seen some dead and dying patches, wondering about soil culture.
Yeah, I'm hard time to identify the dying patches without really seeing the pictures. But if I'm going to seed and not really share, it's probably Kentucky bluegrass. It might be tall fescue, but if I'm going to interseed with it, I'm going to go interseed with more Kentucky bluegrass, just because you don't want to get patchiness if you could have with some tall fescues. And then you want to make sure you get a seed that some of the new bluegrasses are really, really dark in color. And so it can stand out, and so you're going to have a lot of contrast in the grasses. And so go to a good distributor or nursery and say, you know, I need seed that's really super dark green, just like a nice green color, and seed that into there to prevent that patchiness from occurring.
All right, thank you, Bill. Okay, Lauren, this is a viewer who is along Blair, along the Missouri River. They had these mushrooms grow up in the wood chips in their landscaping last spring, and they were kind of these dead mulberry and elm trees.
Oh, wow. Those are beautiful.
Yeah, I figured. They're near Dodge, and they're wondering what they are and are they poisonous.
I love the squirt can. That's awesome.
It gives good scale.
Look at that squirt can. It does. You know, there's a couple things. So this is a stinkhorn mushroom, and any of our viewers that have been working in their flower beds or in the mulch bed, and you find something, many times we get called and they say they think they found a snake egg or something, because it'll be gelatinous inside, and it'll be an oval structure and have usually just a couple fine threads running out of it, which are feeding that, and that's the early stage, the ovule stage of that fruiting structure, which is the fungus that's coming up. They usually have a strong smell to them on the top. They're actually spread by flies that are attracted to that smell.
Blowflies.
And so they're really a neat mushroom. And so one of the things you can do is take that, if you find any of those little ovules or those round bodies, dig up a small amount of soil and just put that in a plastic container and put it on your kitchen cabinet. And when you wake up the next day, you're probably going to have one of those large structures sitting there.
And they're
really cool.
Poisonous, not poisonous.
I wouldn't eat them.
Yeah,
well, you could try.
They
I don't know that
bad.
they're poisonous, but if you could tolerate the top of that and you want to lick that, go for it. I'm not gonna do it.
It smells awful.
I'm
They
not,
just
yeah,
smell
I'm not going to
awful.
encourage eating that one.
It smells like a cadaver.
Most of them of the genus Phallus.
Yeah.
is the other one.
Right.
So,
Okay, so Jeff, instead of a picture, the Twitter question from the week comes your direction, and that question was, can we use water from our rain barrels to water our vegetable gardens? And I believe our answer was at Husker DDS, not recommended for food that will be eaten, just for the landscape. What do you say, expert?
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, we don't know what's coming off the roof and into that, and so, you know, it's probably not recommended that you use that around food crops, your vegetable garden, that sort of thing. But it is safe to use around, you know, I'll use mine for my little garden potted plants that I'm growing and that sort of thing, so, and on the lawn, so it's safe for that.
Great idea to still capture that rainwater, just don't use it on your mater plants.
Right, right.
All right, excellent. Well, you know, we've spent a lot of time in recent years helping you understand the benefits of growing your own food. Most of what we've suggested has been outside in your backyard garden or berry-producing shrubs or nut trees. For our second feature tonight, we're going to take a look at a structure where you can grow your food right inside your own home.
All right, what we're looking at here is a home-based hobby system called Aquaponics. Aquaponics is a merger between aquaculture, the culturing of fish or other aquatic organisms, and hydroponics. What we have down here is our fish. We have two beds. One is a raft system that's a floating bed that just sits in there on a base of water, and the other one's a substrate bed that has just rock wool cubes that I actually just seed into. And what's happening here is we're taking the water, recycling it up to these two beds, and then they filter back into the fish tank. The fish waste is the food source for the plants. And this is converted through a process of nitrification, just ubiquitous bacteria that occur in the air, They convert the food, the waste, fish waste, to plant food. The plants eat the food, return the water back to the tank. Anybody can get into aquaponics. You can buy commercial systems or hobby systems, but it's really easy to repurpose, reuse just local resources. This is just a split 55-gallon food-grade drum. Everything has to be food-grade because you are growing food. This 100-gallon aquarium was purchased online from Craigslist. The only thing that was purchased new out of this whole system was the water heater, the air pump, and the water pump. You need something to hold your fish in. You can use a fish tank, preferably something that is food safe, food grade, so you don't want to use anything made of concrete, anything that's going to leach any plastics, anything that's a concern that it's going to be in the fish source or the plant source. So you need a fish tank. You need plumbing to deliver the water to your grow beds. You need some material inside your grow beds as a substrate for your plants to grow in. You can buy commercially grade stuff such as hydroton. You can use river rock that is lime-free. You can use lava rock. You can use perlite. There's numerous other substrates you can source locally or repurpose for that as well. If you don't want to use a substrate, you can also just make rafts. So you can buy the styrofoam material from Lowe's, cut holes into it, and just plant your plants into the plugs, and they'll grow straight into the water. You'll need a pump to deliver the water to these tanks. The plumbing delivers it back to the tank, and then an air pump and some air stones. And a water heater if you're growing tropical fish. First of all, it's a great science project for kids because it teaches a lot of different disciplines. There's a lot of biology that goes in here, a lot of chemistry that goes into this, a lot of just hydrology. There's a lot of things that kids can get really excited about. For home preppers or urban homesteader, myself, it's a great way to grow food year-round.
This system might not be for everybody in our audience, but it really does prove a point that you can grow your food almost anywhere all year round. And as Kenny pointed out, it's really a great science project for kids to explore where food comes from, lots of food. And I think he said he has as much as 500 pounds of tilapia out of his tanks in his house. That's a lot of fish.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, Fred, so you have, for your fourth picture, this is actually something that students found up when they were doing a little rescue tree planting. And what are those? There's two of them, if our audience can see that.
Yeah, and if they were just a little larger, I mean, these are tiny. If they were a little larger, our viewers would notice them, would recognize them. These are cicada nymphs. Right, so they're baby cicadas that are living in the soil. They feed on tree roots, don't usually cause any particular injury. But again, those are going to continue to develop. These are probably what we call annual cicadas. They have a 1-year life cycle, so they'll grow very quickly. They'll complete development, and they will be emerging in July, typically when the annual cicadas come out. And while I've got our viewers here, I want to remind everyone that we have brood 4 of the 17-year cicadas that are going to be coming out beginning in May and June of this year. And that's going to be really exciting because if you're on the eastern tier of counties in Nebraska and into Iowa, I mean, they're incredibly loud. And it's really going to be interesting to have the because they only every 17 years.
We just might have to do a minute.
That's brood 4, and if you want to go on the internet and sort of look up brood 4 17-year cicadas, there's lots of information now on the internet. So
fun, excellent. Thank you, Fred. All right, this is a Geneva viewer. Okay. Excuse me. She sent a bunch of pictures. Had dead spots when it greened up this spring. She did say that the lawn was seeded in 2003, a mix of bluegrass and mostly fescue. Dead spots are in front of the house, east side of the house, and somewhere on the north between the house and the street.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is another example of likely herbicide injury. You can just tell by the shapes and how lethal it was. It was probably something that was applied, man-made, and probably happened last fall. Also looking at those pictures, we saw there some signs of scalping, which I'm seeing a lot around Lincoln area when I'm traveling for work. And that's part of one of the reasons we don't want to put fertilizer down too early in the season, because right now the grass is growing like crazy and we just can't keep up with it with our mowing. And so it's another good reason why next year let's hold off on that fertilizer so we don't have as much scalping issues that we're seeing right now with this rain and warm weather.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Bill. Okay, speaking of turf, we're going to throw this one at you, Lauren. This is a Northwest Omaha viewer. The turf is established. It's normally a dark green, but he's saying all of a sudden brighter green spots are coming up throughout the lawn.
Well, and Bill and I talked a little bit about this before, and we showed the picture, and I guess we're thinking maybe possibly just a nutrient deficiency type thing with the high moisture, cooler temperature. I don't see any evidence of disease there. There are some yellow tuft diseases, but that doesn't fit really in the landscape we're in. So I would personally let it go. I'll let Bill comment too, but I think just letting it go is probably going to come out of it.
Yeah, it's something we're seeing a lot in the bluegrass around the Omaha area last week. I think it might be related to the cool rain that we had a couple weeks ago and cooling the soils off, and that may be the issue we're having. And it says the soils warm up this weekend, that should start to alleviate that coloration.
All right, thank you guys. Jeff, this is a viewer who said these things have popped up all over in her garden, and she doesn't want to pull them up if there's something she planted.
Sure, yeah, I don't blame her. Unfortunately, I don't think she planted them.
Right.
maybe the tree in the front yard. Those look like green ash seedlings. So I would say go ahead and safely pull them. Or if it's in the lawn, you could just mow them. They'll eventually fade away. So during your weekly mowings.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Well, we of course want you to follow us on Twitter, and we are tweeting a question every single week. And this week's Twitter question is one that will appear on our screen, which is: a rose bush wasn't covered over the winter. They don't see any new green growth, only see leaves from what was underground, and they wonder what they should do. If you have an answer, tweet us back at BYFUNL. We will pick the winning tweet next week, and we will throw it toward one of our panelists and see if they can answer it. We have one announcement, and that would be the Auburn Community Garden Club 2015 Plant Share, Saturday, May 2nd, 8:30 to 12, and that's in Auburn, Nebraska. So fun things in the gardening world. All right, just a little bit of time left for questions, gentlemen. This is a viewer in Lincoln who wants to know, he knows worms are beneficial. He wonders if you can have too many, and should he supplement the garden with more worms?
Never too many. They're so important in our landscapes. In the turf, they break down thatch, they aerate the soil. Their manure is really beneficial to the turf. In the garden, it's the same way. Never too many. Sure. I mean, if you collect night crawlers, you collect worms, take them out and cover them with soil and put them in the garden.
Perfect. Awesome. This is a Blair viewer, Bill. Okay. They had a yard person sprayed for dandelions and fertilized, or sprayed fertilizer. It's a little unclear here. Okay. They wonder if that works, dandelions plus fertilizer.
The fertilizer will work. The dandelions too, it's going to knock them down. It probably won't kill them, especially when it's sprayed mid-bloom like we happened last couple of weeks. So it's going to look like it's sickly, but it probably didn't kill it, unfortunately.
All right. Lauren, a viewer has a canister of home orchard spray about 20 years old. Contains Captan, malathion, and methoxychlor, and wonders if, what? Is it going to work, or should they get rid of it in the appropriate
those
way?
Are insecticides.
Yeah, except the Captan is the only one that's
right,
a fungicide. So I guess I'm okay with the Captan. Fred, how about the other two? Just be cautious on use of products that are older in any case, and make sure you're reading the label. But are those two insecticides?
Well, I think methoxychlor is probably no longer, it's a chlorinated hydrocarbon. I would question if it's even available anymore.
Right.
I certainly haven't seen it in any local nurseries. So I don't think so. I think I might dispose of that material
properly.
Yes,
properly,
which and there's lots of giveaway of collections going on right now in most cities.
All right, thank you guys. You have two questions that are kind of related about asparagus, Jeff. and they're kind of yes and no's.
Okay.
One is from Raymond, and they want to know if you can spray asparagus with Roundup to control the weeds.
Not now.
And the other is, how far off the ground should you cut your asparagus stalks, and how long can you harvest?
Well, you can harvest, I like to wait till things start to warm up a little bit, and then I'll stop then and let the stalks kind of build up energy over the summer months and that sort of thing. And you want to take your knife and kind of take it right at soil level when I take the stalks off. So I'm not leaving little stubs. I'm taking it down low.
All right, and if you haven't had any yet this year, it's really good.
Mine frosted.
Oh, well, you get to go to farmer's market.
Yes.
Cover your plants.
Well, they'll come up. I mean, but
Yeah.
again, the
Yeah.
first crop, frosted.
Exactly. All right, Fred, we have about 20 seconds,
Okay.
and this viewer wants to know how to get rid of squash beetles. They rotate their garden. They really don't want chemicals. So,
Two things. They overwinter as adults, so you want to do really good fall sanitation because that's where they're going, and that will certainly help. They lay their eggs in sort of between the veins, and you can actually go in if you don't have a lot of squash and just crush them. Just use your fingers, put a glove on if you have to. I don't. And just crush those little egg masses, and that will certainly help. And when you see the nymphs, hose them off.
okay, and if you really want to know what they look like and how to not control them, you can see them in our backyard farmer garden every single
We
year.
can.
because we have a very significant crop.
Yes.
And maybe a little
And
squash.
and as an entomologist, I appreciate that.
Well, and our DPH students and their team will also probably enjoy the fact that whatever they're trying to do and test for there, we are going to show people how it works.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you. And unfortunately, that is all the time we have for Backyard Farmer. We do want to say thanks to our panel for another great show and to everybody who submitted questions and pictures. Helping us on the phones tonight, we had Gladys Juring, George Edgar, Kit Diamond, Carol Rustad, Cynthia Connor, and Nebraska Extension Horticulture Assistant Terry James. From Finke Gardens was Luann Finke. Next time on Backyard Farmer, we'll hear an entomologist's perspective on picking out trees for the landscape. Tom Weisling will give us the pros and cons of attracting insects. We'll also show you some great selections to replace impatience. So good night, good gardening, and we'll see you all next week right here on Backyard Farmer.